Okay, hello, my name is Bouvier Yulin and I'm the director for SCMA. Welcome to today's webinar, How I Made It with Jason Harper. This webinar is being recorded and it will be made available to you in about a week or so. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at info@scmediation.org. I will now turn it over to our hosts, Richard Earhart and Jennifer Johnson-Toronto.
Thank you very much, Bouvier. Appreciate the introduction and getting us started. Welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. Very excited to have everybody on board for this webinar on the How I Made It survey series with Jason Harper. And I'd like to welcome my co-host, Jennifer Johnson-Toronto, who is also the co-chair of our programs committee with the SCMA. Jennifer, thank you for joining and helping out with this.
Of course. Thanks everyone for joining.
So anyway, I think without any anything else, any other fanfare, we'll just jump right in. What I will note is you will have the opportunity either through Q&A or through chat to ask questions of Jason or Jennifer or myself. I guess just a little bit of an introduction in terms of the three of us. Actually, all three of us have sort of non-traditional backgrounds in terms of coming into mediation. So I think that for those of you that also might be coming from a non-traditional background, this series and today will probably be hopefully informative and helpful to you. Anyways, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Jason Harper, who is our guest today. And Jason, I can't thank you enough for doing this and for joining in with us. As we were preparing for the webinar, or as I was preparing for it, I was thinking back in terms of when I first met you, and it goes back to my first year with the SCMA. I joined the organization in 2017. And if I'm not mistaken, at that point, you were the president of the organization, correct?
I was actually, and I specifically remember you and your passion for the Education Foundation at the time, which was transitioning into Kids Managing Conflict. So I appreciated your level of passion for that particular foundation that's associated with SCMA, and obviously what you've risen to at this point within the organization. So it's good to have you on the team.
Well, thank you, Jason. And I will just note for those of you in our viewing audience today, Jason, you were just very inspirational to me personally as I joined the association, in that your background also is in education. Mine is in education. So like I said, we came into this from kind of a different perspective. And I think the other thing that people should note is both of us have a background in special education and special education disputes. And so it's where I know a lot of your practice actually began, if I'm getting correctly. And so that being said, I wonder if you could give us just a little sense of your background and what brought you here into this world of dispute resolution, and just a little insight as to who is Jason Harper.
Well, that's great. First off, thanks to SCMA for having me. This is a really cool program. I've seen some of the others that have come about, and so I hope this particular program serves to encourage some of the mediators out there. Hopefully, you can gain maybe some actionable tips and strategies on how to build your mediation practice and achieve what you define as success. So with that in mind, I'll give you a little bit of my journey, and also thank you to you, Richard, and you, Jennifer, for being here and being the interviewers, as it were. So thank you all very much. It was a windy road for me. So I started in education, in special education and general education. I taught 7th grade algebra. I got my start as a one-on-one paraeducator. Some of you may or may not know what that means, but essentially that's a person that works one-on-one with a student with special needs and helps them with their growth and development. And so, I started there. Then I became a seventh grade algebra teacher, and then from there, I became a paralegal. I knew that I always wanted to go into the law field, but I wanted to get a better sense of it. So I went to paralegal training, and that was about a year and change. And then I became a certified paralegal and went corporate for a few years and realized that litigation was not something that I enjoyed. That day-to-day fight, the day-to-day chess match of, well, this person's going to do this, so now we have to do this. And it was extremely adversarial, which did not line up with my personality, with my spirit, you name it. It just did not line up. And when I made that realization, that was the freest that I had felt in quite some time. Because honestly, what I was trying to do, looking back, was I was trying to fit into a mold that I thought people expected of me. I thought that that if you wanted to be somebody, this was the route to take, and this is what you needed to do. But it wasn't making me happy, and so I went to Loyola Law School with Mary Colbert and Sarah Campos, two amazing women who run that program, and it was the first day of mediation training that it just hit me. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I like the joy of that. I still feel to this day, which is pretty cool. And that's confirmation, really. And so, from there, from the first mediation training, until, for about a couple of years, I was just trying to learn everything that I could. I was just trying to soak it all up. I became a nerd in mediation, if you will. And so, from there, I started to build my practice. I interned at the LA County Bar Association. They had a program at the time, the Center for Civic Mediation, also known as the Civic Mediation Project. It took a number of names over the years, but that program helped me cut my teeth. It helped me get my experience, and it helped me choose my practice. It helped me choose what my niche was going to be. And that was going to be special education, because my mentor at the time, her name is Deborah Thomas Beasley. She's no longer with us, but she was an amazing woman. She was one of my biggest mentors. She told me, hey, my original thought was, because everybody was doing the landlord tenant, everybody was doing the civil harassment. So, you just assume that that's going to be your in for a career in mediation. And Deb told me, with the most honest, direct conversation possible, she said, no, that's not you. That's not happening. You are going to burn yourself out and gain nothing if that's the direction you're going to go. And then she asked me, what is it that you know? Like, what is it that you know cold? And I said, well, construction defect and education. And then she said, and then tell me about education. What is it about it that like, what's your experience there? And then I spent about a good 5 minutes just talking about my experience in education. And she stopped me and said, just stop talking. That's what you're going to do. That's your niche. You're going to be a special education mediator, and that's how you're going to achieve your definition of success. And we had many talks about what success looked like. And my definition of success has changed. That's been a living draft. It's been a living, breathing document over the years. But yeah, she's the one that told me what my niche was going to be, and I soaked it in. And now my practice it's a number of things. Yes, it's a special education mediation practice where I'm mediating special education disputes between school districts, charter schools, and families in regards to services, in regards to placement, a number of issues. And then, but there's more that comes to that, which I learned over the years, that goes to facilitating IEP meetings, IEP, for those that are unaware and uninitiated, is an individualized education plan. And that's, at least once a year, an IEP team, which involves the school and the family, come together and try to devise a plan that works to the best interest and development of the student. And so I would facilitate those meetings when there was conflict there. I would provide training. I also provide training for administrators, family members, faculty, staff, when it comes to, the human element, right? Active listening, how to mitigate certain circumstances from happening, in the confines of a meeting. And then I also obviously, mediate the disputes as they come along. And so that's a huge part of my practice. But on the other side, I also mediate employment and workplace disputes. And so, it's a very full practice. It's, I've got something going on every day, but I got something different going on every day, which is my favorite part. So that's a little bit about who I am, where I came from. And, obviously, we'll go into further detail, but that's just kind of an overview.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm always struck as whenever I speak to you, how closely aligned our backgrounds truly are in terms of some of the experiences. But one of the things specifically that you mentioned, when you working as a paralegal, you had indicated that litigation was just, you figured out it wasn't something that you enjoyed. It just,
Right.
I don't like this. And someone gave me, and this was something that I think goes to any practice area, and whether it be mediation or litigation or whatever it might be, but when some advice that I was given was, when your personal and professional values do not align with the agency or the group you're working with, it's just a recipe for disaster. So you better find something else to do. And that's exactly what you did. It sounded like your personal and professional values were just not in alignment, and gosh, and it just opened up an entirely new world to you. So that's excellent. Jennifer, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and comment on this for sure. You talked about how litigation wasn't for you and that wasn't fitting your personality. But when you talk about special education and the work you do with special education, you can, just see the energy that it is something you're really passionate about. And I would love in this webinar, because I know so many of the people who've joined us for the webinar are interested in learning some of your techniques and starting to practice. But before we get into that, I think it's a really important point. There's no denying that a lot of people make the move from litigation to mediation, looking for a more harmonious life, perhaps more inspiration. And as long as I've been in the mediation community, I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with a mediator where they literally choke up about something they've done, about a case that's resonated with them. And I suspect that, based on just the types of cases you work with and your very caring personality, that you certainly must have a story like that. Is there something you can share with us so people can understand really what that transition can look like and how meaningful it can be?
Sure. If I, yeah. Okay, I got one. So I was doing a mediation between the district and a family, and the causes of action or the complaints were pretty lengthy, and so it really kind of centered around some psychological services that the family was alleging that the district was not providing, and it kind of just escalated from there. And so, we're in mediation, and, I'm doing the mediator thing where I'm just, taking everyone's perspective and trying to piece something together. But during caucus, I was able to get some alone time with the family and their attorney. And we're just, one of the things I like to do is just, bake in a little bit of time to just have some conversation, and just talk with the parties, and kind of get them to relax a little bit, because particularly in special education mediation and just litigated cases in general, the emotions can be a little bit heightened. Everybody can get a little bit tighter, but one of the things I like to do is try to loosen things up, even a little bit, and that can make a big difference. So I'm speaking with the family at that moment, and we're getting comfy, we're just talking, we're just riffing, and eventually the parent, the mom in this instance, turned and said to me, honestly, the reason why we're here is because I didn't like the way the psychologist talked to me that one day. And as soon as she said that, it clicked. And I said, well, hold on a second. Let's pump the brakes for a quick second. What if we tried this? What if I was able to allow you or create a space where you could have a conversation with that psychologist, because she hadn't spoken to the psych in months, and that typically is what happens when you go down the litigation route. You just stop talking to people directly one-on-one. Asked the attorneys, is that cool? And they said, okay, we'll give that a try. And so I was able to get the psychologist to come to the office. They were not a part of the mediation, and so I was able to sit with the parent and the psychologist at that time, and we were able to break down and go back to that moment, and it turned out to be a complete just misunderstanding. And the psychologist explained their mindset in that moment, and what they were saying and what they were doing, and the parent understood it, they heard it, and and there were some admissions there and said, I always liked you. I thought that something had changed, and that's the parent speaking to the psych, and the psych said vice versa. I always thought we had a great relationship, and you could see that relationship reconciling right there in real time. And after that happened, all the complaints just started to whittle away, and it was weird how that happens. And so that shift from adversarial to collaborative was made right then. And that was a moment where I had a few lightning bulbs go off up to that point, but that was another instance where that lightning bulb went off and said, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is the kind of stuff that is necessary. This is the kind of stuff that's needed. And I was just I was honored and privileged to be a part of that conversation, and to see a relationship become restored. Because Richard, this, for those of you that are in the audience that may or may not work in education, but you may work in family mediation as well. There are long-term relationships in play here. In special education, services start at age 3, and a student ages out of SPED services at 22. So that's a 19-year-long relationship. That's longer than a lot of marriages nowadays. And so in those situations, we have to figure out, and we have to help as mediators, we have to help folks figure out a way to communicate with each other, because guess what? You're going to see that person again the next day, and the day after, and the day after. So with that in mind, this is not a one-off business transaction. This is something that we have to maintain. It's not about this one meeting, it's about the next 5. And so because of that, one of the things that we try to do as mediators, particularly in industries where there are long-term relationships in play, is we try to teach the language. We try to teach how we speak to each other, so that we can mitigate some of these issues that come up, because conflict is inevitable. Let's be clear about that. There's no way that you can prevent conflict. That's just not life, but you can manage conflict. And that's what I try to do. And that's what I'm sure Richard does. And Jennifer, I'm sure that's what you do as well. And everybody that's watching this, what we're trying to do is help folks not just resolve the conflict in the moment, but also to help them give them the language to mitigate the future conflicts that are coming down the road.
Absolutely. And that so perfectly highlights exactly one of the benefits of mediation over litigation, and what an impact you have and had an opportunity to have on that family, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. I've known one of the things that I've seen, because my practice, as Jason, is also in the area of special education. That's primarily where my practice area lies. And I've made that same comment to folks, that what we're talking about here is a very long-term relationship. In fact, I've used the exact same analogy, that it lasts, the relationship that you have, staff and parents, is sometimes more longer lasting than a marriage. And so you're in that long-term relationship. And I was really struck with what you did there in terms of recognizing what was going on in terms of the disconnect between the school psychologist and the parent. And I'm wondering, I don't know if the school psychologist, actually apologized or not, but I'm wondering your thoughts in terms of, do you use apology when you see the opportunity to come up? Is that something that you might in caucus recommend to a party saying, you know, given what's going on here, you might want to consider this. And the use of apology, is that a strategy that you at times use with in these types of situations where communication has just broken down and because of that alone, the wheels are falling off of everything?
Yeah, I mean that's a tool in the toolbox, right? You know, the use of apology, because sometimes it's relevant, sometimes it's not. You know, I have used it at times, and it's been helpful. You know, but one of the things that I would always recommend to you know, the viewer, the person that's watching this, you know, you have to know your audience. You have to, you know, read the tea leaves, so to speak, and you have to, you know what the right tool is at the right time, because you could have the best tool in the world, but if you use it at the right time, it's not the best tool anymore. So you have to be mindful of the people that are in front of you. And I will say, developing that tool set took years. It took years, and it took a lot of training. It took a lot of schooling, and it took a lot of practice. You know, you're not going to. Nobody arrives after their very first mediation training, and so you know you have to get that experience. You have to cut your teeth. And so if I had had that same mediation 4 years prior, I would have fallen on my face. There would have been a very good chance I would have fallen on my face. But you know, that particular moment, at that particular time, at that particular space in my mediation journey, I had the tool ready, and I knew to use it at that specific time. And so to answer your question, Richard, yes, I absolutely use apology, you know, in mediation. But I also, you know, understand the audience. I understand the people that are in front of me, and I understand, and timing is key. Timing is absolutely key.
Yeah, no, the reason I asked that too was one, I find it to be an effective tool, but also um, I also know what takes place if that apology is not genuine. And so
Right.
that's a strategy that I think is you want to be very careful when you bring that out. And that's why I asked you because
Absolutely.
you were very mindful in terms of what you are doing and the direction you're going. And I was just curious in terms of your take on that. So thank you. I appreciate that. What
No
about other
problem.
strategies that are there things that you commonly, you know, in terms of that toolbox? There are some things where you need to dig deep, but
Right.
there's other strategies that, boy, I mean, they're just right there on the surface, and those might be helpful for individuals that are developing a practice in terms of, okay, gosh, you know, I mean, I went through training and there's all these things,
Right.
and I'm not sure which one to pull out when.
Yeah, I mean, the one of the strategies that I use, I mentioned it a second ago, you know, when you're in mediation, you know, one of the things that I like to do with the parties is, you know, let's take a few minutes and let's just talk about literally anything else. Because that can tend to kind of bring the emotionality down, bring the tension down a little bit. And when that happens, you get more organic conversations. And with more organic conversations, more information comes. And with that information, you might find a little nugget there that can help turn the tide in that particular setting. So that's one thing that that it took me a little while to use and to discover. Another is you know, just taking breaks. You know, just take a break. You know, we've been spending all of this time, you know, going over different proposals and you know what's working and what isn't working and why you think it's not working and all of those things. You know, even if we're not having a conversation, I just want let's just, you know, let's get some lunch, or let's, you know, let's get some tea, or let's get some coffee, and you know, and just, you know, take a small break. And that's different from the organic conversations that we have, because sometimes I'll just leave them alone. And you know, we're going to take about, you know, 25-30 minutes, and you know, and this is obviously a situation where, you know, this is a either a half a day mediation or a full day or something along those lines, where we're just, you know, I take 30 minutes and let's just relax. Okay. And let's take a small break, because, you know, when you're in that brainstorming process, sometimes you just get bogged down, especially, you know, if we're in a situation where we're in joint session and we're talking things through, you know, in those moments, sometimes it's hard to like think of, you know, the next creative thing when you have, you know, 3 to 5 people staring at you. And so in doing so, you know, giving them those breaks can be huge.
That's great.
You know,
Um,
Go ahead, please, Jennifer.
I'm just going to jump in and maybe switch gears a little bit. You're talking about your tool set and stuff. And I have to just like say, and I think this is very obvious to our audience, you make it seem so natural. The ability to have a very like light, natural conversation, and in that, effort really being able to go below the line and really get at some of the issues. So I completely commend you for that. You make something so hard look so easy. And one beyond that, but having a mediation practice is really twofold. You definitely need those mediation skills, but you also need clients and a practice. And I
Right.
feel like our audience would love to hear from you about, how did you start a practice?
Oh man. Well, first off, thank you very much for that compliment. And it is definitely not easy. And it didn't come all at once. The fact that if you feel as though I make it look easy, that's a product of a lot of practice, a lot of reading, a lot of just visualizing. There was a lot that went into it. But I appreciate the fact that you said that. As far as starting my practice, it was interesting. I like to say that no one is a self-made person, first off. And my practice and starting my practice and developing my practice was in large part a result of having a set of mentors that would guide me in the different ways to go. Because one of the things that you don't really talk about in your mediation training, or the very first one, your first 40-hour, you learn about the active listening skills, you learn about listening without judgment, you learn about restating, reframing, all those things. They don't tell you about the business of mediation now. And that's where it gets very interesting. And so, very few training programs talk about, advertising. Very few talk about understanding your client base. Very few talk about taxes. Oh my goodness. Very few talk about, these types of things that you have to consider when you're starting your mediation practice, and how you're gaining clients and what it is. Are you focused? Do you have a focused area? Do you have a succinct statement for what it is, who you are, and what it is that you provide? And so, my practice, my journey in developing my practice, it started at the LA County Bar Association. Like I mentioned, Deborah Thomas Beasley, sat down with me and she told me, hey, this is what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to focus on your subject matter expertise, because that's going to give you the credibility that you may or may not have because of your background, right? And so my background, in terms of a mediator, is I'm a mediator that does not have a JD, just so we're clear. And so, and Deb told me that. She said, you're a mediator that does not have a JD, so the litigated case is going to be tougher for you to get. Now, this was, years and years ago, but this is what she told me at the time. And another person who's very dear to me, put up the JAMS website and the Judicate West website and the ADR Services website, and showed me the entire roster of mediators, and said, how are you going to compete with all of these folks that have retired judge after their name, that have been practicing for 30 years, practicing law and litigation for 30 years, and all of those things, and were routinely about a smooth 30 years older than I was. How are you going to compete? How are you going to stand out to them? And my first thought was, well, if you just look at me, I'm definitely going to stand out. But from an expertise standpoint, how are you going to stand out? How are you going to make yourself known? And so what I ended up doing was, I did a few things. The first was I learned what my focus was, and that was special education. And so from there, I had to get a really good sense of, who is your client? What does your client look like? Who are you working for? Who are you going out to get? Who are the parties that are going to be coming to you? And so that would be my first bit of advice for, any mediator that's starting out. Who is your client? Who are your ideal clients? What industry are you going into? What do they look like? And not only what do they look like, what do they read? Where do they go? What is it that makes them tick? What are their concerns? What are their wants and needs? If you have an understanding of that, you're well on your way. Okay, so that's first. Second thing was, I got involved with professional organizations, much like SCMA. And so, in joining professional organizations and, and another mentor of mine, Therese White, wonderful, wonderful person. She encouraged me to join SCMA. And so, to kind of elevate this, join a professional organization. And, she encouraged me to join specific committees. And so really getting intimately involved with these organizations. And so, this is a windy road, but I promise I'll get there. But she told me to join these committees. And what ended up happening was, in joining those committees, I joined the communications committee and I joined the programs committee for SCMA specifically. And in the programs committee, I'll speak to that one because that one had the most tie to building my mediation practice. In the programs committee at that time with SCMA, you were like, the president was the chair of the programs committee. And at that time, the president was Wendy Kramer, who was another mentor of mine, who is an amazing, amazing leader and an amazing mediator. So I got to sit under the learning tree of Wendy Kramer and a few other folks that were on the programs committee who became president, Joe Markowitz, Robin Weinstein, Floyd Siegel, all of these amazing leaders, amazing mediators, creative minds. And so in working with them and learning underneath them and doing the work of the programs committee, I was able to attach my name to something larger. And when I went out to different organizations, when I went out to different panels to coordinate events for SCMA that they were involved in, now those organizations now knew who I was. And it wasn't just, hi, I'm Jason Harper, random mediator, just calling to see what you got, that they would have hung up on me. And some did. But when I called back and said, I'm Jason Harper with SCMA, oh, now they want to stay on the phone and they want to talk to me. And actually, we're working together now. And so in doing so, they get to know who Jason Harper is. And in some cases, those same organizations came back after the program was over and said, hey, Jason Harper, mediator, we had an amazing time working with you. We think you're great. Actually, we're doing a training. Would you mind leading it for us for money? And I said, absolutely. So, that was a way of getting my name out there. And I was able to advertise the work that I was doing. One of the things that I've noticed is we live in something of a front runner society where people don't want to use you unless they know that you're already being used by other folks, right? And so that is, it's unfortunate. I believe in giving folks a shot, but that is kind of the society that we're in to a large extent. So, what I recommend in those situations is let people know what it is that you're doing, whether you're getting paid for it or not, but let people know what it is that you're doing, because that lets people know that, hey, this person is out here, making things happen and doing things, and people actually want to work with them. Maybe we should be working with them. And that is how you increase your name value. And that's one way that you build your practice. So, understand your niche, then join professional organizations. The third thing that I did was I got creative. When I said earlier about understanding who your client base is, and in education, essentially my client base is families and school districts and essentially the State Department of Education. But how would I get myself known? What did I want to do? And this is something that I didn't know when I first started out, which is all the things that you can do, as a mediator. One of the things that you can do is become a conflict coach and teach people one-on-one what effective communication looks like, how to mitigate the conflict in their own lives and their own professions. And so what I ended up doing was, in the spirit of being creative, I set up my own seminar. I created my own conflict resolution seminar in the great city of Seal Beach, California. And it was extremely small. And I made it available to, parents in the area and their kids. And so I advertised at different schools and such. And there's a whole thing behind that, but we might get into that a little bit later. But what I did was I created a seminar on conflict resolution, and the local newspaper picked it up. And and they put my information on there, and I got conflict coaching clients from there. And so those were my first few actual clients, and it was amazing. And then from there, in building my practice, one of the things that I noticed was in order to build business, one of the things that I needed to do for my industry was proposals and submitting proposals and bidding for things. And so I did that. And that's how I got my first, ADR consulting gig, which, had me providing mediation and conflict resolution services initially to around 12 districts and 23 charter schools within a certain geographic region of Los Angeles County. And from there, the more involved I got with SCMA, and the more that people knew that I was, doing all of this for all of these districts, that's when people said, "Oh, hey, that Jason Harper guy, he might be something. And he seems busy, so let's give him more," right? And that's how it goes. So when it comes to building your practice, one, understand your niche. Two, understand your client base. Three, get involved with professional organizations. And four, get creative. I promoted in places where I knew my client base was, right? So have an understanding of who your client base is and meet them where they are.
Wow, that's really great. And I'll add for you number 5, hard work, because I think it's really apparent that you showed up every day and got creative and kept trying new things. And I think that's, really a testament to how you can get your practice going.
Yeah, no, to that point, I have a common saying just in my own head, every day is a tryout. And no matter how far you think you've gotten, no matter how successful you feel that you have gotten, every day is a tryout. And you have to go in knowing your stuff. You have to go in ready to work. But that's the cool thing. If it feels like it's your calling, is it really work? And that's why I'm able to really do it, as much as I do, and enjoy it as much as I do. And when I enjoy it as much as I do, half the time it doesn't necessarily feel like work. If you can do something all day and not get tired, you're on the right path.
Absolutely.
I'm struck by the quote, the separation is in the preparation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think Russell Wilson says that. Quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
I think he's the one that said that. He was pretty good.
That's exactly it. But I've always admired, and I think it's like I said, I was struck in terms of what you've done. That's what it is. It's getting prepared, and that's what separated you out from others that maybe have not been as successful. Let me ask you this: we talked about what some of the things that you did. If you were to look back on the things that you did, is there something that looking back that you thought was going to be great in terms of promoting your career, and thinking back, I would never do that again.
Oh man.
You have one or two of those to share. They might be helpful.
Jeez. They all kind of translate to advertising. Honestly, the reason why I say understand who your client is and where they go is because I didn't do that at first. I legit considered getting a billboard. Not gonna lie. And looking back, it was not the best. It was not the best idea. There have been times where like I've literally looked into like a lot of different things, and it just, a lot of it was kind of in the range of like getting creative, right? And so the thing about taking a chance is it's not guaranteed to work out, and more often than not it won't. So, but that's where we learn the lessons, right? That's where we learn, and that's where we refine and improve, hopefully, and then we get better from there. But yeah, no, if I went through all the different ideas that I had that did not work out, we'd be here till 6, and it's 12:30, by the way.
Exactly. There's something else that you had made it, that you spoke of in terms of standing out. What made me stand out, and one of the comments that you said was, well, all you need to do is look at me, and and I stand out. And so, I wonder if you could speak a bit to some of the challenges that you may have seen as a young man going in. You were, if I'm not mistaken, you're the youngest president that the SCMA has had to date, and a young man of color. And I'm wondering, in terms of the challenges there, and frankly, the fight for respect, in terms of,
Yeah.
well, youth is something that, oh, well, God, he's way too young. He
Right.
certainly can't know anything.
Right.
And possibly, whatever the issues might be in terms of being a young man of color. And so,
Yeah, no, I can absolutely speak to that. So so when I was shown the roster of the five families, as I call them, the jams, the judicates, the ADR services, and all of those, um, yeah, no, they by and large, I did not fit the profile. And so, from a number of standpoints, from my youth, to my education, to my to the fact that I'm African American, I'm an African American man. A lot of those, you take that into combination. It was tough. I would never say otherwise, because it was tough. And you absolutely nailed it. There is a fight for respect. And so what is it that I did to, and yes, it does get tiring. Yes, it does get frustrating, because you're trying to prove yourself. um you're trying to prove yourself, and it can feel like an uphill climb every day, from that standpoint. I always relish the idea of having to prove myself from a knowledge base, but when you have this perceived deficit from the gate, that's when it gets really frustrating. And so what did I do to overcome that? I've tried to build my credibility up. And so what I ended up doing was, you know, I wanted to show them that, yes, I may be younger than everybody else. Yes, I may not have a JD. All of those things are true. Yes, I'm African American. That's very true. But I also know everything that needs to be known for this particular case, in this particular issue, in this particular industry. And not only in the education field specifically, not only do I know, I've also lived it, so I have that credibility. Whereas the other person that they might consider doesn't. And so and I also have the I guess the raised profile that also came with being a part of professional organizations. And so when you attach yourself to something larger, some of that credibility can rub off on you. And also another thing that really helped was having champions, me having champions in my corner. I tell people all the time, there's no such thing as a self-made person. There are people in the room that vouched for me, that said, actually, you should speak to Jason Harper. He really knows his stuff. He's really good. That it reminds me of a story, and it's hard to talk about without getting choked up, honestly. But it was early in my tenure within SCMA. I had just joined the programs and communications committee, like maybe about a year prior, or so a little bit less. And so I was kind of still a new mediator, and we were having the summer mixer, and it was at this real swanky hotel in Beverly Hills. And like all of the mediators that look like the panels and that look like the rosters on those websites, they were all there. And I was there, just me trying to fit in and blend in as much as I could. Didn't work out. And but I'm having these conversations, and I'm standing in these circles. And there was one person, he later became SCMA president, and he's no longer with us. His name is Joe Markowitz. And what he said was, "Hey, everybody, I want to introduce you all to Jason Harper, a rising star in mediation." And that cosign alone,
mhm. Nice.
that cosign alone gave me confidence to be able to have those conversations and put myself out there. One of the things that is important to understand is that when you have that fight for respect, sometimes that fight is inside yourself as well. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. And me coming from my background, being in that place with those folks, and being everything that I am, at first I felt like it was a detriment, right? Because I felt like I was some kind of a fraud. I shouldn't be here. I'm not in my, 50s, 60s. I'm not, I'm not a litigator of 30 years. I'm not a retired judge. I'm none of these things. How is somebody going to believe in me as a mediator? But it's those types of statements that help you, get over, that hump. And sometimes that hump is yourself. And be able to show folks what you know, because you know a lot. You know more than what you might think of yourself. You're a lot. You're in some cases you're better than you think. But don't use that as a way of resting on your laurels. You always want to get better. That's the goal every day. And so when it comes to that fight for respect, it's about positive self-talk. It's about understanding the industry you're in, having that knowledge base, which builds credibility. And it's also about having co-signers. It's also about having people that are willing to, who have access to those circles, who have access to those meeting rooms, and for them to say, hey, this person, now you may not have heard of them, but there's something, and there's somebody, and they're going to be great. And so if you can have people that can do that, that can make a huge difference as well. And it did for me.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing all of that with us. That's a lot of below the line stuff, and that's important. Yeah, really important. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will also say, when you do make it to the next level, I guess, you always want to leave the door open for other folks, right? You want to make sure to give other folks that opportunity. You want to make sure that you give somebody else what somebody gave you. And so, I try to do my best to, pay it forward, I guess is one way of saying it. And the more I can do that, the better, because we have to keep this thing going. It can't just stay with us.
Right. No, exactly. No, thank you for that, Jason, as well.
Yeah.
You talked about organizations, and I notice I'm looking at our time here, and Jennifer, I wonder if I'd like to have, if it's okay with you, I'd like to have Jason talk to us a little bit about MC3, because I think we'd be remiss to not discuss that piece of your career, and you're still involved with SCMA very clearly, and it's a place that you started, but you've definitely transitioned to doing some other things that are related, and we're of course very much tied together. But Jennifer, what do you think? Should we have him
Absolutely.
talk to us about MC3 a little bit? Yeah, I think that would be great, Jason, if you would.
Thank you all very much. Yeah. So I'm currently the vice president of MC3, which is a mediator certification initiative, an organization that is a sister organization of SCMA. I remember the initial discussion where I was at one of the SCMA board meetings, and a task force was commissioned to look into what would mediator certification look like. And Dr. Jack Getz, who is the current president of MC3, he was tasked with that, and him and a few other folks, they went out and they did the research. They talked to the folks, and they came up with things, and it's been drafted and redrafted over the years to the point where it's been finally refined. And so now it is a national mediation certification initiative. One of the things that I heard a lot as the president of SCMA was, hey, why is it that for the mediators that don't have a JD, why is it that we're not seen on the level as attorneys, when the skills that you learn at law school don't necessarily translate at all to mediation? We have the same skill set. We should be able to generate the same respect. And so this is one of those things where again, we talk about that fight for respect, and that's one of them. And so one of the things that what MC3 does is it provides a definition for mediation, right? Another thing that happened was, during my time as president, was the LA Superior Court put out an RFP to revive their mediation program. But the requirements that they had for the mediators did not quite match up to what anybody else within SCMA thought that a mediator was. There was a base assumption that a mediator is a person that, according to that RFP, was a person that had 10 years of experience, 10 years of litigation experience, right? An active bar membership for 10 years. And then like 30 to 35 hours of mediation training. So really, they were looking for attorneys that happen to just mediate on the side, right? Or that happen to know a little bit about mediation. And so based on that, there was a lot of pushback and a lot of conversations, and we needed to define ourselves. So that's one of the reasons why MC3 was put together. And the second is that, there needs to be some type of way to reach out to the people that are hiring mediators. And essentially that's the general public. And so when we talk about that, MC3 is different from other mediator certification efforts because there's a quality assurance aspect where, the public can have some confidence in not just the qualifications of the mediator, but in the mediation itself. If a person feels as though the mediation wasn't conducted properly, based on what the mediator is supposed to do, they can report to MC3, and there is an investigation process that goes along with that into that particular mediator. And it's that level of quality assurance that sets MC3 apart from others, because you have some mediator certifications that are really just there to make mediators look good to other mediators, right? And that's almost like preachers preaching to other preachers. Nobody's getting saved. What we need to do is we need to reach out to the general public and have them understand what mediation is, because that's not really a guarantee at this point. 2, what mediators do. 3, what goes into becoming a mediator, the education component, performance component, a continuing education, professional education component, and 4, the fact that we can have confidence in what the mediator is doing. If we can raise the field into a profession, which is what MC3 is doing, then I think that's going to serve all of us much better.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Jason. Like I said, I definitely wanted to hear from you in this particular segment with regard to MC3. We've all been working. I remember when it first in 2017, when I first came on board with SCMA, MC3 was just a twinkling in somebody's eye at that point, if you will, and
Yep.
to watch it just grow to what it's become has been pretty exciting.
Yeah.
What I've noticed, there's we've had some chat comments, but I've also noticed some hands have come up, and I don't know, Bouvier, if there's a way, if there's questions. I'm not seeing any posted questions. Like I said, there were some chat comments, but not really any questions. We have about 7 minutes left, and I'm wondering if Bouvier, is there a way for us to answer any of the have any of these questions posted that Jason could possibly respond to them?
Hi there. You know what? I have not seen any questions
Okay.
on the chat or in the Q&A, but I feel if anybody does have any questions, if you could drop it on there, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, where I'm just seeing hands being raised. I'm not seeing them being actually set into the Q&A. So in any case,
We got a cameo appearance. This is
Oh,
great. I love it. I love it.
Perfect. Children, that's good. I have, oh, there we go. Here's a Q&A right there. This is from facilitator Gail Glazer. How did you make your connection with the State Department of Education?
Well, the first connection, honestly, and Gail, it's good to hear from you. The first connection was through an RFP to provide ADR services to a particular geographic region. In Gail, they call them SELPA, Special Education Local Plan Areas. And so, that was the first one. And then honestly, and this goes back to, to the viewer, understanding your chosen industry, your niche industry. In special education, it's a very, very small community, right? And everybody kind of knows each other. So, I got, my proposal was accepted, the first one. And then from there, you realize very quickly that, you know, it's really about word of mouth from there. So fortunately, I did great work with that particular SELPA, if you will, or that particular with that particular contract. And not only did that contract get renewed, but you know, the folks talk to other folks and they say, oh, well, you know, look, if you need somebody to facilitate an IEP meeting, if you need somebody to mediate a resolution session, you know, just like in any other industry, you know, the people talk, and word of mouth is undefeated. And so that's how work begets more work. And so that's how it kind of started with me. And then from there, it built up to put folks in the State Department of Education, understanding who I was, and you know, asking me to speak to them and do speaking engagements for them, and it kind of just built from there.
Yeah, I will just note, and maybe you can comment on this as well. It's been my experience, and I believe this strongly, that in the area of special education, certainly content area expertise is required. And so I
Yes.
want people to think that just because you were interested, that it might be an appropriate area. So it is a very much a closed society, and it is, as Jason says, everybody talks, everybody knows each other within these SELPAs, and really almost nationwide. But it does require content area expertise. And whether you comment on that, Jason?
No, it's true. It's true. And so, you know, if anybody is looking to get into that particular industry, better start studying up now, and know your stuff, because and this is something that for all of you, for all the viewers, regardless of your industry, there's IQ, and then there's EQ, right? There's the, you know, actual book intelligence and just general intelligence and knowing your stuff, knowing the law, knowing the ins and outs of said industry or profession. Then there's the emotional intelligence, where you understand people and you understand, you know, the thought processes, and you understand the emotions that go into play. There needs to be a both and there. It can't be one or the other, right? If you go in as, you know, just going into just facilitate the conversation, and, you know, how did that make you feel? It's going to get you only so far. It's going to get you somewhere for sure, but that's only half the battle, because eventually people are going to want to stop talking about the feelings and start talking about the facts. And when you start talking about the facts, and they see that you're kind of falling short, that's when it's going to get real spooky for you. So I would highly recommend that if you're going into a particular field, and if you want to be a mediator in that particular field, know all that you can. I say this when it comes to education. I say this when it comes to your mediation practice. If you feel like you're called to do something, you want to do all you can, learn all you can, so you can do it well. And if you're going into special education, if you're going into personal injury, if you're going into family, learn all that you can so that you can do it well, because not only is that emotional intelligence important, that general knowledge-based intelligence is extremely and equally important. Make it a both and, not just an either or.
Thank you, Jason. Jennifer, I'm wondering your thoughts in terms of any of this. Now we're kind of getting towards the end. There aren't any other questions that are up, but Jennifer, I'd sure like to give you the opportunity to weigh back in on some of this.
All very, very good advice. I'm reading in the chat. There was in the chat whether Jason is willing to mentor, and also if there's any good way to get in contact. So what I wanted to ask you anyway was, is there a way any of the audience can get in touch with you, whether they have a question, maybe they're interested in your mediation services? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes back to paying it forward, right? I'm always here to give any advice, you know, if anybody wants it. Yeah, so the best way to contact me, you know, you can send me an email to JH, that's Jason Harper, for those playing at home, jhmediation@gmail.com. Feel free to send an email there, and we can talk. We should talk, and you know, I can give any advice that I may have based on my journey, which has been a windy road, but fortunately it's gone well, and I'm proud to say that. And it took a lot of work, took a lot of research, took a lot of learning, but and a lot of mentorship. But it's been a great thing.
Jason, on behalf of SCMA, I certainly can't thank you enough for your time this afternoon. It's 1 o'clock at this point. Jennifer, unless you have any closing thoughts at this point beyond us thanking Jason, I think that we're probably about at a spot where we need to wrap up.
Yeah, no, I'll just echo you, Richard. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the chat, we've kept you busy. A lot of the feedback is all very positive. And we can't, again, thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us today.
Absolutely. Well, and look, this has been amazing. It's an honor and a privilege. It's been an honor and a privilege to be involved with SCMA for so many years, in all forms, whether it was SCMA proper, MC3, or KMC, Kids Managing Conflict, who's doing great work in promoting, conflict resolution programs in K through 12 schools. So, they're doing great work. So I would absolutely recommend that you check them out as well. But thank you all so much. And, if you keep showing up, good things will happen. So for those of you that are, trying to build your mediation career, let's get to it.
There you go. Thank you again, Jason.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Richard and Jennifer, for putting this fantastic program together, and to Jason for taking the time and for always supporting SCMA and showing up when we ask. We're very, very grateful. So for everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. We will have the recording available next week. And feel free to go ahead and share this, not share the actual recording itself, but if anybody is interested, they can reach out to SCMA to get a recording as well. So thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you all.
Everybody.